Hi, everybody. Welcome to 10,000 Roads to Financial Independence. I am your host, Elisa, and today I have Kenji and Letizia join me today in our episode. And they are the founder of Semiretired MD. And in fact, one of them has fully retired, so maybe that is not exactly true to brand. And they have been investing in real estate. They're busy working doctors. Of course, we know doctors are working super hard. And that they have now reached their half retirement, half, okay, it's a quarter, because one of you are semi-retired and the other is fully retired status. And they are also host of semiretiredmd.com. So welcome today. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having us. It's really a pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. So I met Kenji and Letizia through some networking event, really kind of just hit it off. And I found it's just super awesome that they're pursuing this passion to help other doctors who are working 12 hours a day, to reach a zen essentially in their life. And knowing that there is the end to the light at the end of the tunnel with that busy life. Awesome. So Kenji and Letizia, it's refreshing to have two people on my podcast because usually we have just one person and we have them kind of talk about their relationship a little bit. So we're definitely going to dig into a little bit about how do you handle your relationship while you're investing, while you're having a full-time job, while you're having a child, all that dynamics together. So for all you folks who is saying that you don't have time to invest or you don't have time to look into things, I'll challenge you on this. Cool. So Kenji and Letizia, can you kind of tell me a little bit about kind of your upbringing? Like, what is your upbringing like? How is that first seeds of, hey, the entrepreneurship kind of comes in and planted in your head? Who is the biggest influence?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously we have different stories until we got together, when we got together in 2012. My father's a physician, actually, as is Kenji's. And so both of us, I think, saw the physician lifestyle and how hard physicians work, but also how much passion they had for their work. And so both of us, went into medicine. Kenji has a more circuitous route, which he can describe, but I did the very traditional, go into medicine. I went into family medicine because I wanted to be able to treat everybody. And I thought I wanted to go work abroad in a developing country, just like my dad did. And ended up doing a hospitalist fellowship in Seattle. And that's where I actually met Kenji.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Yeah. And then for me, as Leti mentioned, I had a more circuitous route. I went kind of back and forth between medicine and business for many years. During medical school, I started my first startup, and then went back into medicine. And then I left medicine. I did 5 years at a management consulting company called McKinsey, where I consulted for large Fortune 500 companies, mostly in the healthcare space. Then I went back into medicine, and then I went kind of back into doing some startups. I started a couple more companies, and that's kind of where we both, I think really your love for business kind of started there, was that we really kind of started working together on these startups. And I think you really kind of realize that you have a passion for business. And so that led us to starting Semiretired MD, which is a business that we both started together.
Yeah, I would say, when Kenji and I first got together, we were both working more than full time as physicians. And then Kenji also had a startup at that point. So it was incredibly busy. And we even had to schedule days together. Like we had LACA days is what we call them, our first two initials. And that was the time we had together. And then we were so then I started helping him on that startup too, while we were both working. And then eventually, actually, our real estate, we were on a vacation together and we read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and just realized, oh my gosh, this is what we have been looking for. We realized that, we were never going to live that life that we wanted to live with the freedoms that we were going to want with just working, our W-2 jobs plus running businesses. We really needed something that was going to bring in cash flow every single month and free us to not have to work every single day. And so that's when we started investing in real estate. It was early 2015.
Yeah, well, I did want to add, I had read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I think it was a lot of it was I wanted you to read it to get on the same page. And I think this kind of gets into some of your, maybe your relationship questions later, is that, one of the important things for me was to be on the same page with my spouse. Right.
Yeah.
And so Rich Dad, Poor Dad for me was kind of the entree. And then that led to reading all these other books, real estate books and corporation books and all this stuff. And so, but that really kind of started this really for us, this fire, right? This kind of excitement for, doing something that was outside of our day jobs that could get us to financial freedom.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sorry, my sound cut out for 2 seconds over there. I don't know. But we will edit this, the note on that. So that's awesome. And then actually, I want to kind of get into a little bit more questions over there on the early childhood. So Kenji, you're a entrepreneur. I mean, the funny thing I'm going to mention over here is both of your dads are physicians. So somehow it didn't deter you guys getting into this field, knowing how busy it is. So I guess like some thoughts around that. And also Kenji, I want to kind of get into a little bit about your entrepreneur, like where did that entrepreneur bug was planted? If you're kind of thinking, searching a little bit earlier in your childhood and et cetera, is there a certain influence that got you thinking about that?
Yeah, it probably was ultimately my dad. He's a physician, but he was always kind of doing different things or trying different things, and whether it was real estate or selling phone cards or whatever it was just some kind of. He was always kind of doing something different.
He was an immigrant.
Yeah, definitely. And so I think for me, the other thing was and I don't exactly know where this came from, but I've always had this kind of strong feeling of needing independence and not being constrained or controlled by schedules or bosses or whatever it is. And so I chose medicine not necessarily because that was my passion. It was more just because I was following my dad's footsteps and I didn't really have a clear direction. Looking back, I'm really happy I did that, because I think if you're going to do anything, I think having an expertise really helps set you up for creating businesses or whatever. I think the people who really struggle with starting businesses and their own ventures are people who don't have any expertise in any area, right? But having an expertise in medicine allowed me to kind of create my first couple businesses, and then subsequently, our semi-retired MD business is really focused on helping physicians, and so we're ideally positioned for that.
Yeah. And I would say for me, in terms of not being deterred about the long hours, my dad worked in developing countries, and he was kind of a cowboy of sorts. Like, he worked in Papua New Guinea. He was the director of the whole health department. He was family doc, but removing arrows from people, doing surgeries. And so he loved his work and was really passionate about it. And so when I went into medicine, I didn't think I was going to stay in the US and practice medicine. My idea was, I don't want to live this kind of controlled, scheduled life either. I'm going to move abroad and I'm going to practice medicine where I'm really deeply helping people.
Gotcha. So one is like the Tomb Raider, Laura, and the other is, I guess, Indiana Jones, I guess. Indiana kind of does a little bit of everything and adventure, right? That's awesome. And so tell me a little bit more about when you guys, who gave you the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book? Is that like the transitional moment for kind of your thinking on that whole journey of going to FI?
Yeah, I don't personally, I don't remember exactly when I came across that book. It was many years before I even met you. But I don't think, at the time when I read it, I think it was just, I wasn't mature enough. And I don't think I was really well positioned to implement the things in that book. It definitely affected me. There's no question, but it wasn't like I felt like I was really in a position to implement those things. I mean, I think those are ultimately limiting beliefs.
Yeah, I think that you probably just didn't have enough pain, right? Because pain motivates change often.
Right.
And so if you had had enough pain over working ridiculous hours and seeing this future of doing that, then you probably would have changed something. And then Kenji introduced that book to me in 2015. And it came actually after we had had a conversation about 6 months before about how we actually wanted to live if there were no limitations. And Kenji had asked me that question. And, you know, I had started out the kind of traditional, like, oh, I want to live here, I want to do this. And he was like, no, 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 as if you had no limitations. You had unlimited potential. You could do anything. What would you do? And my answer to that was super different. You know, I actually said, I really want to be good at hosting. Like, I want to have my friends over. I want to have big meals. I want to create a community. Like that's, I want to raise, you know, I want to produce olive oil. Like that was, that's actually what I wanted to spend my time. But then that doesn't really fit in with working, you know, 60-hour weeks as a doctor, right? You're not producing olive oil in Italy. And so then we started to look for a way to get there. And then that's when Rich Dad Poor Dad came in and we said, oh, this is the way we get there.
Yeah. So that got reintroduced in some ways where the puzzle was there like a couple years ago, but all of a sudden it kind of got lit up because now you had a need. I love that because only when you're having a lead or a pain, to your point, that it kind of brings in the drives to find a solution to that. So before you mentioned about, so how did you guys get this started? Because you were working probably 60 hours and you're working another 60 hours plus the startups, probably like 80 hours. So like, I mean, you probably barely even see each other. And so how did you then take on another project? Like, how's the time management look like? How do you like first start it? And then how do you kind of reorganize some of your life pieces?
Yeah, I think probably one of the most important things that we established reading Rich Dad Poor Dad together. This was on a trip in New Zealand when we were driving around in a camper van. There was no TV or anything, so we just read books. And so I think what we did on that trip was we developed a really strong reason or a strong why. Right. We just realized we're not going to have the lives we want if we continue doing what we're doing, even if we're making, let's say, 600,000 as hospitalists. I mean, the tax bill on that is huge. And then, you know, really, I mean, people would sit there and go, oh, you know, you guys haven't made. But I actually think that, you know, high income professionals, it's very, very difficult with the tax rates and also the lifestyle inflation. Right. I think it gets really tough. Of course, somebody making $600,000 could reduce their lifestyle significantly. And I think that's what a lot of people are starting to do. And I think it's great. But I would say most physicians are not in that mindset of like, you know, that like I need to really live frugally. Right. And so that for us, you know, we had that strong why, and that really kind of just drove us. And I think the second part of that was, you know, Rich Dad Poor Dad doesn't really give you the strategy, right?
No.
It just kind of talks to you about, you know, how to think about assets versus liabilities. And so I think the other big key was, you know, we kind of had, you know, decided kind of on a strategy, and then we kind of just went for it. And yeah, sure, we were busy. We had a lot of stuff on our plates, but we realized, you know, hey, we just got to do this. And our why just really propelled us.
Yeah, we also set a goal. We decided we were going to replace both our clinical salaries within 7 years. And then we immediately changed direction from the direction we had been going. So before we left for New Zealand, we were looking for primary residences. We were putting, you know, offers. We were getting outbid. It was Seattle. And we came back. We told our agent, we said, we're real estate investors now. We completely had changed our identity at that point. We said, we're real estate investors now. We don't need a primary residence. We're going to rent.
And we're still renting.
Right. We still are renting. Actually, we haven't owned since. And we said, we're going to take all of our money and we're going to buy cash flowing rentals. And that's all we're going to do. And we, you know, got rid of my Nordstrom card. We cut out Starbucks. We
made changes. I mean, real changes, right?
Changes to our lifestyle.
Delayed gratification. I mean, no Tesla. I mean, you know, all just the list goes on and on, right? You have to make those changes and sacrifices, you know, if you're going to achieve your goals. And time, ultimately, I think what we realized about time, I think this might be important for your listeners, is that, you know, ultimately not having enough time is a limiting belief. And it took me a long time to realize that. I resisted it for a long time, but people say they don't have time. That's a limiting belief. You do have time
for your priorities.
For your priorities, exactly.
And so the question becomes, what's your priority?
Right.
And you know, for us, our priority was like, we are going to get there in 7 years, and so that took precedent over, you know, all the other things. And so we were so focused. That first year, actually, we went out and we got 12 doors, and Kenji actually went down to halftime. And the reason Kenji went to halftime was so that we could get real estate professional tax status, and so that he could, you know, shelter our income, so we could lower our tax rate, so we could take everything and put it back into real estate again next year. So we've been super focused on whatever we earn in real estate, we put right back into real estate for compounding to grow.
So I love to kind of touch on that too. It's like saving tax. I think you guys touched on it twice already. But if you're an individual, kind of doing a little bit of math over here, if you're an individual who's making 600K, even 400K a year, you'll be in, part of your tax is going to be in a 39% bracket, which is pretty much for like, I don't know, 2/3 of your salary, or not 2/3, 1/3, I don't know. My math is terrible. Apparently 40% of your income, basically. So you're basically at 600K, you're paying about, how much is that? 250, 240K a year into taxes. That's a lot of money. With 240K, you can buy like 2 single family houses, depends on the location, with the down payments and etc. So optimizing for tax, having Kenji like reducing his hours to half-time. And also, I'm guessing, Kenji, you were somewhat self-employed in a way that is like not a W-2 income for a better contestant.
Yeah. There's no income,
Yeah, so that could actually put it into more doors. Now, tell me, how did you got 12 doors in the first year?
Yeah, so a big part of that was buying a very kind of lower cost properties. I mean, relatively cheap properties. Another part of it was we took the down payment that we were going to put into our primary residence and literally just put it into real estate instead of using on a primary residence. And then also we made a lot of those sacrifices. So we were all of a sudden, our savings rate, went up significantly, and we reduced a lot of our expenses. So, our take home pay, right, every month just went up significantly, and that allowed us to accumulate, a good amount of money. And then,
what kind of sacrifices, if you can kind of give some examples for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, literally just going through all the different expenses and cutting out. I mean, Nordstrom itself. I mean, we were, high level, level 3, level 4, or something like that. Yeah, where you get invited to Nordstrom parties, private parties, right? I mean, it's just a ridiculous amount. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars at Nordstrom, right, would be one example. Starbucks itself, we added it up. It was probably $6,000 to $8,000 a year on Starbucks alone, when you add it up, right? So you literally just go line by line on the expenses and just go, what can we eliminate? And we just stopped, literally, didn't go out to eat as much. We just tended to do things that don't cost much, like things we love to do, like hiking, right? As opposed to some of the more expensive travel, right? Travel abroad.
Yeah, we didn't upgrade our cars too. I mean, we had older cars and we just stuck with them. There were a lot of little changes that we made to do this. And then ultimately, about a year later, we sold the business that was Kenji's startup. We took that money as well.
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. So 12 doors, and then you must be not buying them in Seattle, are you?
Well, so back then when we were buying them, but much further outside of Seattle. So we were going back then it was looking at Auburn, Tacoma, going up north, up to even up as far as Marysville and north of Marysville. I mean, I know now, people are going down, all the way down to Olympia and all the way up to Cedar Woolley. But back then, where you can find the deals is going way further north and way further south. And so that's kind of what we were doing. We weren't buying, within Seattle. We did actually house hack one property in Seattle, which appreciated a ton. But we got rid of it after we house hacked it because
we forced appreciation.
We forced a lot of appreciation.
We completely rehabbed it. And I mean, obviously a lot of that rehab was also tax savings, right? And then we just maximized rents and we sold it. as well. So yeah, we were doing things like house hacking, you know.
Yeah, that's another sacrifice, right? And
Yes.
and so her parents lived with us for a period of time, and her parents have lived in like all these third world countries, right?
Yeah.
And they said it was the worst place they've ever lived in terms of neighborhood. The house itself was physically, it was nice because we fixed it up, but the neighborhood was, they said, the worst place they've ever lived in.
When we bought it, there were squatters in it. I mean, you know.
Yeah, it was.
That's amazing.
What our colleagues thought of us, you know, two physicians with at that point we had like a 6-month-old baby living up in a neighborhood where we had, you know, squatters in our house before we rehabbed it. So
yeah,
amazing. That's amazing. So I found that it's really fascinating because you just mentioned you have 6-month baby as well, and so dealing with the new motherhoods and like all that is already stressful enough for everyone. And what kind of like, how did you even decide that this is the house we're going to be buying? And actually, not only that, house hacking means you actually live there as well. Like what did you do in terms of, you know, you decided that was the right decision at the time?
I got to say, I don't know. We ran the numbers and the numbers made sense, and we had a goal, what we were working towards. And so we were just always aligned on what we were going to do. And I mean, in that next year, you know, after we started another startup. We lived half-time in Atlanta. We had a baby that year. We house hacked a property, and we're still working at the hospital. So we just figured it out. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the house hacking, you know, some of it's timing because, you know, we were looking for another place to live, and, you know, it was within Seattle city lines. So we thought, you know, it would be, you know, maybe a good option. And yeah, we just, you know, we wanted to do the house hacking because we can get a lower interest rate on it. And also we knew that, you know, it was a great way to live, you know, rent free, right? Because we were renting for a long time.
We could see the potential in the property too. We could see how under rented it was. We could see how all the changes we could make to make it rent better. And so we knew we were going to end up making a profit on it at some point.
Well, I remember another one of the sacrifices. We moved in with our parents, actually. So that's another sacrifice. So we lived rent free for a period of time. So imagine, right? Imagine with the doctor's salary and not paying any rent, how much money you can save and how quickly you can save it. So
that's another five property.
They're great, but that's a sacrifice. I'm sorry.
Yes, it is. So did you guys have a division of like your roles are kind of in your business or in your investment journey? Like also family, because when you have babies, when you're running a small business, everything kind of just blends together. Like, so is there kind of like a role that you guys come agree with or just naturally somehow assigned? How did that kind of like transform, and what kind of roles do you guys have?
Yeah, I think we're fortunate because I think some of our skills are kind of complementary. Like Letizia, for example, loves looking for properties, right? So she's always in Redfin, or she's always, you know, looking online for different properties. And so, and that's something that I'm not as interested in. I'm more interested in the operations. And so that was kind of a nice division of responsibilities. But, you know, I think, you know, some of the things that, you know, that might be helpful for your listeners is, you know, in terms of partnerships with a spouse, I think one of the most important things, which we already touched on, is having the kind of the same goals and a really strong why, and being really aligned. And one analogy I always make is, you know, if the two people are rowing the boat in the same direction, you're going to get to your destination a lot faster, you know, a lot easier, right? Than if one person's rowing one way and the other person's rowing the other way. And we see this all the time in couples, is that they're going opposite directions. And so you're not going to get anywhere if you do that, right? And so I think that's one kind of really, really important tip. I think another one is you really have to separate out your personal from your work, right? And you have to have that really fine division between, you know, when you're at work, right? And you kind of treat each other as colleagues, but you have to turn that off when, you know, when the day ends, and you have to kind of shift right back into, you know, being a couple. And so one idea is, you know, you can kind of have nicknames for each other, a work nickname and a personal home nickname, right? And kind of go, hey, you know, can you come back, and get out of work, right? Get out of your head and into your heart. Can you do that and kind of shift that from,
Yeah.
from work to personal? I think that's
Yeah.
another thing that helps us.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about these hacks, like the hacks, like what is the nickname, by the way, that you had for each other at work?
Oh, well, I mean, I'd rather not say the work one, but just to give you an example, Tony Robbins, one of our mentors, he says, for Sage, who's his wife, Sage is her business name, and then
Yeah.
Bonnie Pearl is his, like, kind of personal nickname for her.
Huh.
It's like, and again, it's a very kind of personal, we don't know, a lot of us don't know what it really means, Sage
Yeah.
versus Bonnie Pearl, but there's a real strong meaning there before, and we see, it's actually funny, like when we do these kind of personal, when he gets together with these smaller groups and he's talking to his wife, he always refers to her as Bonnie Pearl.
Yeah.
But then on stage in the big audiences, he always refers to his wife as Sage. So
Yeah.
the difference is very interesting to kind of see. So
yeah, I would say one thing that really helped me is in the beginning, especially when Kenji was working on his business, I would see all the time he was spending on his business, and I would feel like it was him spending time in his business and not spending time with me. And that started to breed resentment. But when we had a shared business, I could really, anytime I could start to feel upset about it, I could also see that he was doing it for us. He was doing it for our future. And that mindset shift, if he's off working on email, and it's 10 p.m. at night and I'm like, why are you doing that?
Mm-hmm.
I can understand that it's actually coming from him wanting to provide and for the family and wanting to kind of get us to our goals. And so it's a hard mindset shift to make, but it's so important. And I think one other piece of really great advice is that, you see what you do and you really understand all the value you bring, but you don't see what the other person does all the time. And you don't see all the sacrifices they're making. And so your tendency always is to think you do more than the other person. And that's in any partnership, I think.
Yeah.
But realizing that actually the other person is doing so many things that you don't see, really is helpful. And then I think
I think that's a great hack, actually, though, for not just your partner in life, but also a business partner, is to actually recognize the other person's contributions and set aside time to give the other person credit. And so what you do is, in a relationship, this is something from a relationship expert, her name is Allison Armstrong. And so what she did was, when she got home, her husband would come home from work and she was at home. And what she would do is, like, once he's all settled in and kind of, gotten work out of his head, she'll go to him and say, okay, is it okay if I kind of show you all the things that I did and get credit for it? And she's like really cute, and she would do this just like that. And then her husband would be like, yeah, okay, I'm ready. I've gotten work out of my head.
Credit parade.
Yeah, credit parade. Let's go do can we do my credit parade? And so then she would take him around and show him all the 1 million things that she did as a stay-at-home mom, right? Because you're as well, and I know you do a million things, right? But the question is, does your spouse recognize every single thing that you did and give you credit for it? And that was the whole point, was that she did a million things during the day, and she would literally spend half an hour to an hour, however long it took, to show him every little thing that she did, so she can get that credit and recognition, right? And so it was time that they set aside that they both recognized was really important for the other person. And so, again, when he came home, he recognized that was a really important part of her day. So that he would take the time and actually really focus on, yes, you did this and I recognize you for it. And so I think that's a really nice hack for partners.
Yeah. Another thing I realized is, I had different standards than Kenji on certain things. So I felt like the laundry needed to be done every 2 to 3 days. In his mind, it maybe needed to be done every week or two.
Right.
And, I started to actually get resentful about that too. I felt like I was doing a lot more around the house, but again, switching my mindset to, this is my standard. And if I'm doing the laundry, it's because I'm doing it for me, because I want it to be done, because I want it to reach my standard, and that's not his standard, and he shouldn't have to follow my rules. And Brooke Castillo calls this the manual, which is you have a manual for how your spouse should act. And why should your spouse have to follow your rules and your manual? They're their own person. And so, you know, having that terminology, I think is really, really helpful to realize, yeah, the other person doesn't have to do what you want them to do.
You got to throw out the manual.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, so do you guys have a course about like a relationship consulting while in the business?
You know, we did actually record this morning on that, because, you know, a lot of our students at Semiretired MD, you know, we teach a course on how to invest in real estate, and then we have this membership site where people go afterwards and they have community and they're learning more advanced concepts. Well, a lot of our students are starting businesses with their spouses, and so these life skills, these kind of hacks, I would say, are so important. So
Yeah.
we do have people like Allison Armstrong on our podcast talking about relationships, because it is so important to running a successful business.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to listen to that episode, and I think I'm going to make my husband do that too. And so how do you come up with the same picture? So when you first started your journey, so all the way back in there, because I think we're most different when we first start this journey, because everybody has like kind of their own goal. To your point about different standards, people had a different picture in their head. So how do you, like, what did you guys do to kind of come together with a common picture, or maybe a picture with a fraction of what you wanted individually out of that picture? What is the process that you went through?
Yeah, I think when you're doing this exercise, I really think it's important to kind of visualize, and really what we say is use all the senses, right? Like, you know, if she thinks about olive oil and living in Italy, you know, like think about not just visually, but what does it smell like, right?
Yeah.
What does that olive oil taste like, right? And really kind of create that really strong mental picture in your mind. And I think the other big part of it is that you may not necessarily share the exact same picture, but
Right.
it's also to kind of recognize, you know, oh yeah, okay, that sounds nice, and I can support that, and
Yeah.
but this is also what I have. So I think it's also kind of being open enough to being, you know, recognizing that you're going to have different kind of images, but the question is, how do you kind of create a shared vision, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if my vision is, you know, oh, I want a, you know, nice Tesla, then okay, I can have a Tesla in Italy at the villa, right? So,
Right.
so just kind of, you know, creating that picture, right? So just
Right.
again, you know, creating that shared vision, I think is really important.
I think also, if anything, we are very flexible. And I think, you know, if you asked us 3 years ago, you know, are we going to live in Italy full time? I probably would have told you yes. But now 3 years later, like the idea is we're going to live there part time, and we're going to live in Seattle part time. And, you know, so
Right.
things do change over time. So we're always refining our vision depending on what we want together. And it's not like what we came up with 5 years ago is still stuck in our minds exactly the same. It changes over time. So you don't have to have the perfect shared vision, I think, up front, but at least, you know, coming to some sort of shared agreement that you have an emotional bond to, an emotional pull to, is really key to get you through those challenging times.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also potentially, even if you're not in the business together, to kind of share the steps, or come up with the steps to kind of get there, because then the other person may be knowing like, oh, this person is away because they are fulfilling the goal. This is like one of the steps that we came up with. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, you know, your investment strategy changes, because you guys were buying single family houses, doing flips potentially. I guess buy and hold, you buy and hold some of that too with rentals. I understand recently you guys, not recently, a few years ago, you started doing the apartment building investment as well. So tell me a little bit about that, like mind growth set changes, and why did you guys decided to do a shift off strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we started off with small duplexes mostly, and we did a couple single family homes, and we did that house hack, right?
Yeah.
But you know, I think that really started out the way it did because of the money we had, and then just being able to find what was cash flowing, right, and buying only what was cash flowing. We always started off as buy and hold. And I would still say that's the core of what we do is buy and hold. But what changed for us was the 2017 tax changes with bonus depreciation. Because at that point, all of a sudden, it became very lucrative to turn over properties. So properties that I thought we'd have for 10 or 15 years now, we're selling the ones, that we bought 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and we're turning them over into bigger and bigger properties because that's where the bonus depreciation is. So for example, we just took 3 of our properties and turned it into a 32 unit. And now we're generating that bonus depreciation again to shelter our income. So I would say actually it's the tax changes that changed our approach, and our approach will change again. If tax changes change, we'll, maybe we'll just go back to buy and hold, and that's where we're going to be. And we've always done value add. We didn't really understand the strength of it and how it could massively help you take a step up in wealth when we first started out. But luckily we figured it out about a year in. So since then we've always done rehabs on our properties and really, really forced a lot of appreciation.
Yeah. But we with that said, I think we still do love the smaller properties. I think on a percentage basis, I think you can actually make more money on the smaller properties than the bigger properties. Again, on a percentage basis. I know obviously with bigger properties, you have the scale, but if you just kind of think about, where the mom and pop operators are, where I think is where you can get the best deals. You're not going to have as many mom and pop owners when you have the bigger properties. We were fortunate in our 32 unit that it was actually a true mom and pop that was selling their property, at a great price. But I think in most cases, especially bidding for these bigger properties, you're talking about like, 10, 15, potential buyers on, bidding for the same property. And, what I quickly learned was that best and final does not mean best and final. Best and final means it could be 3 more rounds in best and final. Okay. Well, what's the point of calling it a best and final if that's not the best and final? And so, just ridiculous, ridiculous price escalation on properties, and driven by, I think, largely bonus depreciation, which is what these, professional investors are going for. Again, not saying that there's not opportunity in the bigger properties, but we find it so much easier to buy something at a huge discount on the smaller properties, and then you force a little bit of appreciation, and then you can just all of a sudden you can get, ridiculous 100 to 200% returns on a small little property.
Well, that's in part because you're not only buying from non-investors, you're selling to non-investors.
That's true too.
Who are
Yes,
emotional,
exactly.
and they buy negative cash flowing properties, which an investor would never do. And it's crazy. So I would say small multifamily, we love it for those reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. To the point where we're just like, hey, let's go buy some, a fourplex.
I mean, the fourplex still come across my table, and I'm always tempted. Some of our best performing asset we still hold right now is some of the fourplexes that we have.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. That's how we feel sometimes.
And then also, obviously, and then people don't understand this too, is because you guys probably self-managed and went through construction yourself. That's the knowledge that you learn from small properties, and which is making it suitable to be an operator of small apartment building, which can be very challenging for novice investors. Sometimes they're better off investing in larger properties because there are professional people to kind of hold their hands. So it really kind of create a little niche for yourself, which is really great. I definitely share with your investment philosophy over there, because that's kind of what we implemented in some markets as well. So fast forward a little bit actually backwards a little bit, when you started Semiretired MD, what kind of spurred the fact that you guys want to create this, and what are kind of learning that you learned from essentially like marketings and et cetera in that business?
Yeah, so we started Semiretired MD in 2018. And the reason we did that was we had at that point achieved financial freedom, and we were, we didn't obviously reach our goals of replacing both our incomes that part. We weren't even close, but we had come to realize actually we don't really need that much to live, and we were financially free. And so we were telling all our friends about it for basically since we started, we've been telling our friends we're into real estate investing. This is like going to get us our freedom. And then our friends started seeing us have success. And so we, even in the first couple months we started helping our friends do it. And then it just got, the ball got bigger and bigger, and we were helping, like 10, 15 people do it. And we felt like we just never had enough time to really sit down, tell them everything we knew. and do so in a very structured way.
Yeah.
And so we felt like, well, if we start a blog, we'll be able to kind of show people what we're doing, help other physicians who are burned out, really unhappy with work, do exactly what we've done, and we'll be able to reach a larger community. I think we didn't really realize how amazing the community was going to be for us, and how it was going to push us to be better investors as well, which is like such a great outcome, because we've learned so much over the last 2 years because we're helping other people and, you know, going through their experiences and seeing what challenges they face. And so it's been really phenomenal for us to actually apply a lot of the learnings to our own investment portfolio. But yeah, that's why we started it, was to help other physicians.
Gotcha. And then from physician to like having the blogs and then dealing with the technicality of like marketing, et cetera, what are some suggested books or steps would you tell someone who is starting a small business to kind of do that? Because any small business would need, you know, the knowledges in terms of marketing and branding and et cetera for themselves.
Yeah, I would say the most important thing is relationships, just like in real estate, right? It's the relationships that we formed with other bloggers and with other people in our space, other physicians, that were able to make us successful, because actually we had a lot of relationships with other bloggers who already had email lists. And for us, what really helped is, you know, we could do so much marketing by ourselves with our small little group. But if you have relationships with others and they become your affiliates, suddenly you have access to their email lists. And that's what allowed us to grow so quickly, because we went from relatively unknown to building a significant business within a year.
Yeah.
Well, I think another key with marketing that I think a lot of people miss is just the focusing on a niche. And so, you know, we niched not only on physicians, right, and focusing on that, and then, but also focusing on, you know, cash flowing rentals, right, which is the other kind of, you know, we could have focused on a lot of other things, but we focused on these two niches. And so if you really think about it, I mean, it's a very, very narrow niche, but if you can kind of be the best in that niche, right, or even the only person doing that niche, then, you know, you can grow, you know, and get recognition. It's a lot easier to break through that noise, is what I say. And then I think the kind of building on what Letizia was saying, what preceded actually the relationships was the book, The One Thing, because you were asking about good books. So The One Thing is really I think an important book, and was how we landed on relationships. Was we asked ourselves the question, what is the one thing that we can do this year to grow our blog, our podcast, whatever it is, our brand? What is the one thing that we can do this year? And ultimately we concluded, we thought about all the different things that we could do, and the one thing was just relationships. And that was the key. I mean, we just built like literally maybe one or two, actually maybe three really amazing deep relationships that we're still, you know, we have a mastermind with this group even to this day, and we meet on a regular basis. And these relationships is what, you know, just kind of propelled us.
Yeah. And I think that the last and final key is delivering value. So we didn't start out selling, right? We didn't start out saying, hey, buy from me, like, here's all the things that I can do for you. We started out by giving and delivering value to people, caring about them, and really caring about what they were able to do with their lives. So people feel that. People understand that you're not there just for yourself. You're there for them, and you care about them, and you want to help them as much as you can. And that's the way we've always led our company. And I think if you lead from the heart with caring, you know, I actually think the money just follows. But I think a lot of people start out by saying, oh, I want to sell this. And that's not the key. The key is to deliver value to other people. And then they turn into raving fans, and then the money follows.
Yeah. I'm guessing you guys are also a huge fan of Tim Ferriss, the 4 hours a week, because he always talked about the, you know, the 10,000 fans, that kind of like, it sounds very much like that, which is where you have a niche and you're really kind of developing very deep into that. That's great advice for us, for that. And what is the process that you went through to kind of distill down to your niches?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we, you know, initially we listened to a lot of like Pat Flynn was kind of an influence for us.
Pat Flynn really helped us put it together, because he has a sentence. It's like, I help blank do blank, and what sets me apart from everyone else is blank,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and the results they will get is blank. Like, I mean, there was some statement like that. And I remember us spending a lot of time thinking through the statement. I gotta say, the thing that really changed our whole blog though was Tony Robbins and attending Business Mastery and his trainings, because, you know, this concept of bringing value to people and coming from a place of caring really like propelled our business, I think, to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. And every time I interacted with you guys, I just feel like you bring so much value, and, you know, you will introduce me to people who we want a relationship with, like no string attached and all the other stuff. And I deal with a lot of these relationships. So I would say definitely it exudes from how you carry, how you actually interact with other people as well. That's amazing. Well, so that's so super awesome. That kind of concluded our, you know, like my interview. And I think the last question is, what from here on? Like, what now? What is your like next 5 years? Maybe 5 years is too long of a time for you guys, given that you guys retired in 3 years. I did my math over here. You know, so what now from, you know, here on, you know, 2 years, 5 years, you know, the one thing for you to do in terms of what you guys are focusing.
So first I want to clarify, I don't think we'll ever retire, because so we consider ourselves semi-retired, meaning that we have the freedom to do whatever we want, but there is nothing more fulfilling than helping others and watching their successes. And so Tony Robbins kind of says, for fulfillment, you need growth and you need contribution. So we're continually growing by learning and building this business together, and then building our real estate portfolio. So right now we really have 2 businesses going. We have our real estate portfolio and we have Semi-Retired MD. We still actually work in the hospital as well. And so and we also have like 3 kids, right? So there's a lot going on. But we're not retired because we are still doing what we love and we still have the passion for it. So where we'll be in 2 years, 5 years, I mean, I think the key is we're going to live the life that we want to live and figure out what that is and just follow it. So, you know, my idea for next year is we'll go to Europe, we'll get a Sprinter van, we'll bring a teacher with us, and we'll just go drive around Europe and, you know, look for our rental properties in Europe, you know, but you know, will that change? Will that be different in 6 months? I don't know, because we're always refining and building what we want to do next, and different opportunities come along, and you know, it's
No, I wanted to really emphasize to your listeners that, you know, financial independence is not really the end, right? I mean, it's not, you can achieve it, but you'll be okay. Like, what are you really going to do once you achieve FI? You're just going to sit on a beach and do nothing. I think for most people, within a week, for some people within 24 hours, they're going to be like, I'm bored. You know, I gotta go do something. I can't deal with this. Right. So it's just, it's not the end. I don't even think it should really be the goal. I think it can be a goal along the way of your journey in life. But what we've, you know, found, and we actually went through a period after achieving FI where we were just kind of like, you know, what next, right? And it wasn't until the cold growth and contribution, you know, when we went into that UPW, it was called Unleash the Power Within. When he's talking about growth and contribution, we realized, you know, that's what we need, right? And just thinking about like you were just saying about growth, I just love having a podcast where we can actually go interview and meet people like Jay Scott, or you know, like we're going to be interviewing the Redfin CEO, Glenn Kelman. You know, so like it's just so cool to be able to have that platform, to have the opportunity to learn from these people. And again, we wouldn't have had that opportunity if we didn't go out and actually put ourselves out there and go do something, right? And so that's the part of the growth for us, you know, is our blog, you know, learning new topics. Every time we write an article, we learn, right? So it's just,
I would say there's nothing sadder than somebody who has FI but has lost their purpose.
Right.
It's a terrible life. We've seen people do that. And so we never intend to do that. Like, we know purpose is most important.
I think that's so true. I think that's why I think it's very important to kind of know why you want to go FI. And oftentimes that is the freedom and the ability to kind of create what you wanted to create without having to answer to anyone. And I think that's nothing like what people picture, like a retire has almost this like a negative connotation in my mind, where you're kind of doing something in idle, like, you know, which is not, high achievers kind of do that. One last question. And with your 3 children, what are some of the things that you're doing to kind of instill them the creativeness and the entrepreneurships, in terms of like bring them up into creative beings and entrepreneur spirits like you guys do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think we're taking a lot of the Tony Robbins teachings about really emotions, and kind of like looking at your emotions, looking at one of the things with our daughter we're always talking about is kind of, she can control her emotions, and one of the other things that we do is
she can master her mindset.
She can master her mindset. Yeah.
And we even
really
talked to
important.
her. I mean, she's 4. We talked to her about something called the Triad, which is, how you structure your language, how you manage your physiology, and then the meaning that you're giving things and what you focus on really changes your experience of things. Yeah. And so if she's upset and crying, like part of what we talked to her about is like, do you want to get up? Do you want to move your body to kind of change this? Or do you want to change your language, or you want to change your focus? Like, what do you want to work on to kind of get through this? And I would say the other thing is changing that can't mindset, right? Of like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I mean, I think that in itself, just kind of saying, of course you can do it. You can do anything you want to do. That in itself will over time just get reinforced and actually change her whole life.
Yeah. So what I say when she says can't, right? I say, we don't say that in this family. We say, how can I? Right. Yeah. So that, and I tell this to a lot of our students is that your kids have learned the word can't from somebody, right? And that somebody is you, right? Yeah. It's because you say it, they've learned it, right? And if you want your kids to go around saying, I can't do this, I can't do that, then keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing a great job of it, right? But if you want to change that, you really got to break the cycle. Is you yourself have to change that mentality of I can't to how can I? And it's not easy, even to this day, despite actually a year solid of Tony Robbins training, going to events every month, even to this day, I have to catch myself saying, I can't, or we can't do this, right? We don't have the time, right? And so again, this is a daily practice of really kind of making sure that you are very vigilant about what the words language that you use.
Yeah. And I would say also, Sarah Blakely talks a lot about how her parents raised her to like celebrate mistakes, because mistakes mean you're doing something different. And so, I mean, it's
a really good one. Yeah.
This is one that we work on, and certainly we're not perfect at,
but yeah, this is a tough one.
Yeah. But recognizing that mistakes are natural, and like telling our kids that, it's normal to make mistakes. It's actually good to make mistakes, because it means you're trying something different or doing, not to be afraid of failure. And that's definitely a tough one.
Yeah. I mean, I was raised with a father who was extremely critical, right? So I couldn't make mistakes, right? If I made a mistake, I was criticized, right? So think about that, right? The difference between, so that makes me somebody who, is afraid to go out and try new things, right? I tend to be more conservative as a result. And so, you really got to think about that outcome. And, even with our kids, I mean, just recently we were just like, just criticizing, or I was criticizing, our daughter for, making a mistake. And I just had to catch myself, right? It was really hard. And we help each other, right? That's the other thing, is that help each other in a supportive way and say, hey, it's, step in and say, hey, it's okay to make mistakes, right? When the other person is being critical. So that's what we're trying to do. Again, it's not easy. I'm not saying that we're perfect by any means. It's very difficult. We make this mistake on ourselves. Yeah. And so we're working on it, and but I think it's a good hack, as you say, in terms of, trying to raise somebody who's, kind of
willing to go try new
yep.
things and willing to be an entrepreneur, knowing that they may
Might
very,
fail.
very well fail, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And how does our listener tuning to find you guys? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to find us is just go to our blog, semiretiredmd.com. We have 2 Facebook groups called Semi-Retired Physicians and Semi-Retired Professionals. And then our podcast is called Rich Doc, Poor Doc. So come check us out.
That Rich Doc, Poor Docs. I would definitely check it out. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And that wraps up our another episode of 10,000 Roads to Financial Independence. Definitely want to have your partner on board and working together as a couple, because then you guys are going a lot faster than most of our listeners potentially. Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.